Good evening, and welcome to the Burbank Police Commission meeting. This is the regular meeting for February 19th, 2025. Let's see, our public comment will be coming up in just a little bit. To speak during public comment, members of the public may speak for 3 minutes in person in council chamber, or they may call 818-238-3335. Members of the public who attend the meeting in chamber will speak first, followed by those phoning in their comments. We will go ahead and start with we've done the call to order, and we are starting with our roll call. Ms. Nakamura?
Commissioner Chapman?
Present.
Chair Coons?
Here.
Commissioner Elman?
Here.
Commissioner Feruzin? Here. Commissioner Hakobian?
Present.
Commissioner McKenna?
Present.
Commissioner Wenzel?
Present.
Good to be here with everybody. Mike Elman, if you wouldn't mind leading us in the flag salute. Please. Thank you. All right, we are moving into item C, which is commission announcements and reporting out by commissioners and ad hoc subcommittees. And if it's okay, we'll start all the way over to my left with Romick.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir. Last night, me and a couple of my colleagues had the privilege of attending the homeless count, and thank you, Sergeant Turner, for taking us out on a wonderful ride. And the other thing I want to report out on is just an update from the Drive Right, Save Lives campaign. We are going to be meeting with some organizations like Boys and Girls Club, Kiwanis Key Club, to work out a scheduled calendar for the rest of the year for the workshops that we'll be working on. I just want to thank Captain Stoll and also Lieutenant Vargas for the meetings I had with them in the last few weeks, kind of work something around their schedule that makes sense. I also have some wonderful news in regards to the Drive Right Save Lives collaboration. We are now working with the Glendale PD. On Glendale PD, I spoke with Lieutenant Peter Robertson on Monday, and they saw what we're doing here, and they were really enthusiastic about doing something similar in the city of Glendale, whether it's workshops or working directly with our dealerships. They have about 21, and they see a lot of the issues there. So what's really wonderful is now we get to collaborate and work with them, and that's all I have to report.
Thank you very much. Paul?
Thank you. I also had the opportunity to be on the homeless count last night with Sergeant Turner, and I really want those of you who have never been involved with it to realize just what a wonderful opportunity is to see how caring and how much the Burbank Police Department is reaching out to people that are less fortunate. This is absolutely a handout, a hand up, and how can we provide services, and it's very refreshing. I also had the privilege on the 7th of attending the badging ceremony for one of my scouts. He's a Burbank High School graduate, Anthony Charavelli. He received his badge at the LAPD on the 7th. He'll graduate on March 7th, and I will let the Burbank PD know that since he ran cross country at Burbank High, he was immediately picked up for the Baker to Vegas run, so so you'll be seeing him out there. But congratulations, Officer Charavelli. We look forward to seeing you.
Paul, thank you. Thank you, Paul. Mike?
I also did the homeless count last night. Thank you to Detective Anderson for providing us a ride. That's all I have to report.
Thank you, Mike. I have 2 items. Again, with the homeless count, Sergeant Turner, thank you again for taking us out yesterday. It's not just an opportunity to do the work and be involved in the homeless count. And I also want to thank other city staff that were involved in helping organize last night's activity, which is really important, not just in Burbank, but countywide. But during the count, there's the official work that's happening of the account, but there's also the conversations and the camaraderie that takes place where we're able to really get some insight in terms of additional operations of the department. So thank you for that time. The second item, and it is currently underway right now, and we'll be wrapping up hopefully within the next day or so. I was asked to participate on behalf of the commission for the police chief interviews. So that process has been going along. Good set of interviews today. They will be moving on to another round tomorrow. So we will hopefully be hearing soon about how the selection process is going. Layla?
Yes, thank you. I'm just doing a report back. Is this the right?
around the pedestrian bicyclists traffic safety. That's come up a couple times here, and so I was able to work with the data that was received. Thank you to the department for that. And we will, I have some copies here. It'll be circulated electronically to folks, and we will agendize for a future meeting. So if you'd like a printed out copy, let me know, because I have some.
Okay.
Thanks.
Leila, thank you. Mike?
I have nothing to report, except I am looking forward to seeing what the tally is for the homeless. Thank you for, guys, for doing that.
Our pleasure.
I also
Ann.
participated in the homeless count last night, rode around with Mike Hellman and Detective Anderson, and it was enlightening how Detective Anderson, representing, of course, the police department and every individual, they know where people are. They have a sense and a familiarity. Oh, let's go see if so-and-so is there. And that speaks volumes.
Thank you. Thank you. And if anybody is interested in continuing with the homeless count, the third day of the homeless count takes place tomorrow. If you want to go with me up to Lancaster in the Antelope Valley. So just thought I'd throw it out there. We're going to be starting at 6 a.m. Let's go ahead and move on to item D, which is oral communications for 3 minutes. Again, the phone number to call in if you'd like to make public comment, it's 818-238-3335. And I don't think we have anyone in the audience today. Do we have any callers?
No calls pending.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on. Actually, item E, commission response to public comments. I want to remind our commissioners that this is an opportunity not only to respond to public comment on the phone, via phone or via phone or in person, but also if you've received any emails that you've been involved in communications outside, you're more than welcome to share that at this time. Do we have any responses to public comment? Okay, we are moving along. We're now on item F. We're moving on to the approval of minutes from January 15th, 2025. Thank you, Ms. Nakamura, for preparing those for us and for Paul for reviewing that. Paul, are you motioning that we? Okay, Paul motions to approve. Mike Ellman seconds that. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, the minutes are approved unanimously. Thank you for that. And we are cooking with fire. Moving on to item of business, item G. The first item is the review of the community engagement meeting with discussion and possible recommendations, if applicable, regarding public comment. As we did not have, we were able to comment and respond during the meeting itself, but we did not have any public comment. So is it safe to assume that there's no items to report out right now and we can move on? Okay, we are moving on to item G2. Preview, discussion, and possible recommendations on the e-bikes and e-scooters report to be presented to City Council on February 25th, 2025, including state laws, collision data, and new laws this year. And do we have, I hope I get this right, is it Lieutenant Fromer? Thank you. Lieutenant Fromer, welcome back.
Thank you. All right. Chair Coombs, fellow commissioners, thank you. It's a pleasure to be back again. I've spent a lot of time in front of Police Commission, so
We appreciate you.
I'm waiting for the honorary nameplate somewhere.
We will work on that.
So I've got the PowerPoint for you. I've been told to embrace brevity, to be brief. So I'm going to embrace it tonight. If you don't mind starting the PowerPoint. Perfect. Okay, I just want to, on this, you've seen this PowerPoint, so what I'm going to do is just do like a refresher of some of the initial slides in the beginning so we can get through those, and then focus on the new updated information near the end of it. Again, there's some information that was contributed by CHP Commander Andrew Pointer. So he was the ones appointed to do, one of the assembly bills was for the CHP to create traffic safety training and information for e-bikes, and we'll get to a slide in there. Just a refresher on this, the e-bikes are broken down into 3 classifications. The only thing important to know is Class 1 and 2 are limited to 20 miles per hour at the top speed limit. Class 1 is pedal assisted, Class 2 is throttle assisted. Now Class 3 is the one, this is the one that is allowed to go up to 28 miles per hour, which is also pedal assisted. Going through the bikeways, Class 1 and Class 4 are the only ones that limit operation by a Class 3 bicycle simply because of how fast it goes and the vulnerable roadway users such as pedestrians and children. That's why they're not allowed on those, but all classifications are allowed on Class 2 and Class 3 bikeways. On an e-bike, a class 3, you have to wear a helmet for all users, including juveniles. And juveniles, anyone under 18 has to wear a helmet on any of these devices. But you also have to be 16 years of age or older to ride a class 3. E-bike considerations that a lot of people don't know is you don't need a driver's license. You don't have to have registration and insurance like a vehicle. Just the party category and vehicle type, that's for collision data. I only added that in the slide because it's important for us to actually do an analysis of e-bikes or mobility device collisions. We need to have it coded right. So we need to get all law enforcement agencies across California to make sure that we're not simply calling them bicycles. The manufacturer requirements, they have to have a label on it describing what classification, the wattage, and other information on there so that your average police officer, your average citizen understands what bike they are purchasing and what the limitations may be. Just the horsepower versus cubic capacity on wattage. Typically on the e-bikes, you're going to see wattage. So it's going to say 750 watts. That's basically 1 horsepower. I bring that up because these bikes are limited, e-bikes are limited to 750 watts. Anything above that, it is no longer an e-bike, and it cannot be operated on our roadways as an e-bike. The law makes it's illegal to prohibit with these bikes, which a lot of people are doing, especially people that may have some know-how on engines and how these engines operate. They can actually change the speed and dynamics of the motors on these bikes, which will actually make them, that disqualifies them as a class 1, 2, or 3 e-bike, because now it's taking them outside of the classification. Dangerous rider behaviors again. I don't know if you've seen in the news the large group of kids that went to the local 7-Eleven convenience store. They took over the street. They took over the parking lot. They stole a bunch of merchandise from the store. But this tends to be growing in Southern California. But it makes it real difficult for police officers, especially if you have 1 or 2 patrol officers and you have a group of 50 to 100 people on e-bikes. The large number of riders on the road, passengers in an unsafe manner. They are able to take a passenger if the bike is built for a passenger. If it is not, you cannot have passengers. A lot of people not wearing helmets and not following the rules of the road. Statewide concerns, this is now here for Burbank. We just started to see, the last time I did this presentation for you, it had not hit Burbank yet. As of 2023, we saw a significant increase in e-bike and e-scooter collisions, and I think all of us have seen an increase in these types of devices on our roadways. So education is going to be important. Underreported crashes, which doesn't help us do a proper analysis if people don't report them. The coding, as I mentioned, in our collision reports. The enforcement is going to be important. Now that we're seeing it become a problem, it's going to be important to have an increased police presence to do enforcement of the current e-bike laws. Concerns for us are pursuits. Obviously, it's pretty easy to try to get away from the police if you're on a bike and you can cut through somebody's side yard or through breezeways. It makes it very difficult for us. And how involved do we really want to get as a police officer doing a pursuit of somebody on an e-bike? We want to make sure it's reasonable and that we're doing proper enforcement. Some of the issues that have come up are stolen e-bikes. You don't have to register the bike with your local agency. It would help if they did, but currently if somebody steals one, it's going to be hard to track it down, especially if somebody removes the serial numbers. And then what does law enforcement do for the illegal street bikes that are outside of e-bike classification as far as taking the bikes? How do we store them? How do we give them back to somebody? And how do you give them potential appeals to us taking their bikes? So that assembly bill I was talking about was Assembly Bill 1946. So the CHP had until September 1st of 2023 to create this curriculum, which they did. I encourage everyone to go onto the website. I put it up here at chp.ca.gov. The banner I put on there on the slide, that's the exact banner you would click on for this training. It's very in-depth, very comprehensive, and the best part is anybody that finishes this course can print a certificate of completion to show that they've completed this training course and they have their basic knowledge of proper rules and regulations for e-bikes. Unfortunately, this hasn't changed. As I mentioned last time, collision data is about 2 years behind. So we're still kind of limited to proper collision data for 2022. But I can let you know that collisions have increased on bicycles ever since 2021. And the only good news is that the fatalities compared to 2022 have actually decreased over the last couple of years. However, the injury collisions and the number of collisions have steadily increased. If you look here at the city of Burbank, it's minor when you put us in comparison to LA County or the state of California. As you see there, we had a couple of e-scooter collisions beginning in 2020. You know, we had one a year for 2020, 2021. Starting in 2022, we had our first e-bike collision. We had another one in 2022. Now you see the sharp increase in 2024. You have 6 e-bike collisions and 4 e-scooter collisions, the most we've seen. So now we need to be cognizant of this. We need to be aware of this, and how are we going to address this as a community and as a law enforcement department. Here's an extensive list, that big blue book there, that big vehicle code. You know, our poor cops have to know these codes. There's several of them here. I'm not going to go through them, but basically, as you can see, there's several laws that have already been enacted to address equipment regulations, rules of the road, operations on the road. All of these things are addressed in the vehicle code. Now, because this is a growing problem, we're not the only community that saw this increase. The beach communities have been plagued with several issues with e-scooters and e-bikes. If you look at the rules and the changes to the law, they're trying to address these things. So one of these things is to be very strict on what classification these e-bikes are, what is an e-bike, what is not. There was issues with fires with some of these batteries. So what they've done is now fire marshal has to make sure that these things are going to a proper laboratory for testing for the batteries. So you're not even going to be able to sell an e-bike that hasn't gone to proper testing for the batteries to make sure fires aren't being started. If you also get into, there's some local counties, so Marin County and San Diego County actually got assembly bills for them to start pilot programs, and what they're doing is controlling the age at which somebody can ride a class 1 or 2 e-bike. So you have 16 years of age or older to ride a class 2, and that issue is because, as I mentioned, that's throttle assisted. And then if you get into San Diego County, they've gone a step further, and they want to limit it to 12 years of age or older to ride either a class 1 or a class 2. So there's concerns here. What's great about these pilot programs is they have to report back any law enforcement activity and collision data to the state and to the legislators, so they can decide, is this going to benefit all of California or not? So these are good pilot programs. Again, we'll touch on riding on the sidewalk. Can an e-bike ride on the sidewalk? There is no state law preventing them from being on the sidewalk. We can have local regulations. The vehicle code in the state have afforded us the right to create our own municipal codes to govern this. In the Burbank, it's only the downtown area if you look at our municipal codes. Everywhere else in the city, you can ride a bike on the sidewalk. Are bicycles allowed to ride in traffic lane? Of course. The only rules are, if they're riding slower in traffic, you should be at the right-hand edge of the roadway, the same direction as traffic, or if there's a bike lane available, or if you have 5 or more vehicles stacking up behind you. Obviously, you're delaying them, so you should move over and let them pass. Here's the list of municipal codes. I won't go through these. The only things, the reason I put this up here, and this is what I'm going to stress with City Council, these are really outdated. So our municipal codes, just like the state, haven't really kept up with the growth of they call it the electric mobility market. So what we need to do is get proper definitions, rules that we want to adhere to that may be separate from the vehicle code, and then also areas we want prohibited use of these devices because of vulnerable roadway users, right? So our hiking trails, equestrian trails, our sidewalks are something to think about. Let me touch on these because these are going to be some of the main points that need to be addressed. Apologize here. I'm keeping up on myself. So E-bikes and e-mobility devices are being developed at an increasingly faster pace. To give you an understanding, economists believe that the e-bike market will expand from 48.7 billion last year to 71.5 billion in 2030. And it's going to have exponential growth from there. So they outsold electric cars in 2024, suggesting a larger market for these bikes, and they're shifting from recreation to a reliable mode of travel for people, especially because they find them friendly to the environment. They're cheaper to purchase, they're cheaper to maintain, and they're actually make it easier for short distances of travel. Again, Burbank municipal codes need to be updated to keep pace with this change. City planners also need to create safe and connected infrastructure. I think smart planning is going to be on the horizon for us to keep people safe. And various cities right now, as I mentioned, there's already pilot programs going on in Marin County and San Diego. Several other places have started pilot programs to look at viability of transportation connectivity and impact on traffic congestion. Obviously, electric scooter laws are different from the e-bike laws. Here's where I don't like the confusion. You have several devices. You get into a little bit of confusion with law enforcement and the public. So to ride a scooter, you have to have a driver's license. You have to wear a helmet. And also, you cannot ride on sidewalks. And they're limited to 15 miles per hour. So you can kind of start to see, if you start telling law enforcement in the community, this device can go 20, this can go 28, this can go 15. Some consistency would be good for everybody, because then we all know the rules and we can all apply them evenly across the board. Here's another problem. I don't know if you've seen these. I've seen them everywhere in Burbank. But the self-balancing board, the electric unicycle, and the electric skateboard. These devices are now going at incredibly fast speeds, which are really unsafe for a lot of these users, especially when they're riding in the bike lane or on the right-hand edge of the road next to vehicles. A lot of these riders are not using any type of protective equipment. And if you do 20 to 30 miles per hour on that device, a collision, you're going to have some serious injuries. Those obviously don't have a lot of specific rules by the state or our municipal codes to govern their use. One of the biggest growing concerns right now, if you've seen this, I see this on the hillside above east of the freeway, up on the hillside of Burbank. This is very concerning because most of these riders are juvenile riders. If you look at these electric vehicles, these are not e-bikes. If you see the one on the top, looks just like a bike, that goes 52 miles per hour. If you look at the one at the bottom, that looks like an electric motorcycle, but has the design and feel of a bike. That goes 60 to 65 miles per hour or above, depending on downhill or not. Unfortunately, juvenile riders are buying these, parents are buying them for, and they're giving to them, because when you look online, these are sold as e-bikes. It doesn't say electric vehicle, it doesn't say electric motorcycle, it says electric bike. So if you haven't educated yourself as a parent, you think you're possibly buying an electric bike. Unfortunately, 5,000 plus wattage on that instead of 750, the 750 maximum. And the speeds are incredible. So our officers have observed this increase across the city. I've seen a lot of juvenile riders on these bikes doing some dangerous riding behaviors like wheelies and standing on the seat and other things, not just riding them. Anything sold, any of these devices do not fall within class 1, 2, or 3. They are completely illegal to ride on public roadways. You cannot do that. Basically, you're going to have to keep that off on a racetrack or a dirt track somewhere. There's obvious concerns here for the entire community. Near misses collisions are on the rise. Even though I don't have a collision, we have people that call us that tell us, I was almost hit on the sidewalk by one of these devices doing 40 plus miles per hour. Obviously, that can kill a pedestrian. If you've seen in the news, several pedestrians have been killed by people on e-scooters and e-bikes across the state of California. So again, the purpose of this, and when we bring this to council, we're going to suggest a code update for our municipal codes. Basically include the definitions of all these devices, prohibited use and proper use, and any equipment that we would like to see, or any limitations that we would like to see on any of these devices. The vulnerable roadway users, those specific areas across the city should be addressed in this. We are going to recommend, the city of Brea just did one It's the one that we're going to recommend that we kind of mirror or take a look at to help us write our municipal code updates. Also, the increase in police presence to do enforcement and an educational campaign. So it should mirror the information that the CHP has produced, so that we're not in conflict of what they've done for statewide training. But we want to do that on our own as far as our own social media platforms and our Burbank Police Department distributing this information to the public. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Lieutenant Firmer, thank you so much. I know we will have questions and comments. Before we start with that, I just wanted to acknowledge and welcome Councilmember Chris Rosati, who's here with us, who is one of our liaisons to the Police Commission. And Councilmember, I just wanted to lift up, if you want to get in on this conversation, the reason being is because these are issues that the council, may be asking the commission for specific recommendations, and I wanted to make sure that we left that open. So I'd like to invite you to be able to participate as you see fit.
We had this discussion, actually, City Attorney, we had this discussion. As a liaison, we're not really supposed to engage.
Okay.
We're just supposed to listen and report back. Am I right?
That's correct, but you can also be present and speak to the council as an individual.
An individual.
Correct.
Okay.
Public comment or any time?
We've done it where we've allowed Councilmember Mullins to address the commission during an actual item that was for agenda discussion, but technically it should be during public comment,
Okay.
but
Yeah, I'd like to be able to make that exception for this one as well. In case, the reason being is because this is the presentation that will be going to City Council, and there may be an interest in the City Council having us provide additional recommendations beyond what the work the City Council is doing. So I just want to open that up as an option.
And
Thank
just for the public's knowledge, I believe this item's going to get pushed to March 11th.
March 11th.
Okay, just to clarify.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. So with that, I'd like to open it up, and I'd actually like to invite Paul to start, because this is something that Paul's been helping us pursue for a while now, and thank you for helping get this to the table here.
I bought an e-bike a little over a year ago from a reputable source, I thought, Amazon. I put my ride on my cell phone down, and I'm going along on the Chandler bike path, and I'm a big guy. And I was going 35 miles an hour by accident. And we came back, I brought it up. The chief told us all the stickers and all the parameters. Went back and looked, none of them are there. There's no stickers, there's no anything. I practically should go back and buy it again on Amazon to see if any of that criteria is there. But I've done a lot of the research you said there. My initial concern was sidewalks. And what I had been told was the only thing on the sidewalks in the city of Burbank that has got it in the code is skateboards must yield. I would like to know how we can recommend that we simply say pedestrians have the right of way. And because, as you pointed out, technologies continue going to change, and as soon as you make it specific, somebody's going to find a way around it. The stickers, the labels, and, okay, let me get I've had conversations with Councilmember Anthony about this, because we were on the Transportation Commission together back when a lot of this started. And he at the time said that maybe they should be labeled as mopeds. Because I have a pet peeve about wearing a bicycle. I won't get on a bicycle of any kind without a helmet. And so it bothers me when I see families on the Chandler bike path without helmets. And we've had some instances where I've tried to suggest it, and I've been booed off the bike path. So I don't do that anymore. But it's even worse, like you said, at 35 miles an hour. The bottom line is, if I can buy a bicycle on Amazon that I can ride to DeBell, which I have, it's too powerful for a 12-year-old. And we need to find some way to put a lid on that. Thank you.
Before Paul concludes, I just want to acknowledge that Paul was not admitting committing a crime of any sort during.
I was admitting I committed crime by accident.
No.
And I want to acknowledge that, I mean, yeah.
We didn't see it, so it doesn't.
Perfect,
Yeah.
thank you.
But I live on the other side of the alley, from one house away from the Chandler bike path.
Right.
So I see it every day. I'm out there with my dogs every day. And for 20 years, when I was a Traffic and Transportation Commission and Transportation Commission, I've been the boy crying wolf saying, we're going to have an accident. And I'm very happy that I've been wrong. We haven't had anything catastrophic there. But every single day, I see people out there, and I think that it's really a concern because I'm afraid the day's going to come, and I don't ever want to be the jerk that says I told you so.
If I can actually ask that now, I was going to ask, could you describe the scope and the scope of accidents that you've seen or been aware of related to the use of e-bikes in Burbank?
Right. So typically with our bicycle collisions, they're more vulnerable, so they do get injuries. However, it's usually a complaint of pain or a minor visible injury. Unfortunately, when you add the speed of these devices, the injuries are, some of them are very severe. So it's typically what you see with a motor collision, with a vehicle collision. The leading cause of death of these people riding these devices when they get in a collision is being involved with the motor vehicle. So very concerned, severe injuries across the nation and across California. So all the ER doctors are talking about this. They can't believe the types of injuries that people from bicycles are getting, and it's because of the speed and reduced protective equipment, because sometimes you may be lucky if they just have a helmet. But our local ones, 50% of the e-bike collisions were the fault of the e-bike rider. And with our scooters, about, I think 75% of them were the scooter rider who was at fault for the collisions.
Appreciate that. I'm also keeping note for the commissioners. I'm keeping track of any recommendations we might be making. So, Paul, I heard you recommend something a little bit ago, and we'll bring all those back together to see if we want to make any formal recommendations on that.
I've been following this because it's obviously something that I've got some great passion about. And an e-bike is allowed to go 20 miles an hour, 28 miles an hour only with pedal assist. And from the most recent version of the law that I read, somebody came up with the brilliant idea that if there's no pedals, it's not a bike. I mean, it's amazing that that had to go to our legislatures to have somebody decide that it's a motorcycle if it doesn't have pedals. And yes, they're out there.
And they did add that. So that was a clarification of one of the assembly bills, is that it has to have pedals, and it has to have that 750 watt maximum on the motor, on the battery. And then just to clarify, the class 1 is pedal assisted, but it's 20 miles per hour. It is pedal. Class 2 is throttle. Class 3 is also pedal, but it goes 28. So it's just a faster speed for the class 3.
From what I understood, please correct me if I'm wrong, but theoretically, with the throttle alone, it can only go 20. It can only go to 28 if you're pedal assist.
Only if it's class 3.
Okay.
So pedal assist on class 1, it still has pedals. It stops at 20 miles per hour. It no longer gives you power at 20 miles per hour. That makes it the class 1. The class 3, the difference is simply how fast you're allowed to go.
What is being done for instance, a vehicle like a bicycle like mine? I'm calling it a vehicle because that's what it feels like. That was purchased prior to these regulations being put into place.
They still have to meet these classifications because the classifications are in place. The only difference now is that you cannot buy it. They can't offer it for sale. They can't advertise it. It has to meet these requirements to be advertised, sold, or possessed by somebody. So what you want to do is make sure is they are offering some programs on to where you take it to a bicycle rider shop. They can ensure the battery is an approved battery that's not going to start a fire in your house, and that it meets the wattage, and you can get a classification label on there.
I was working with a bike shop that would be.
That would be the best place to start.
Fantastic. Mike, go ahead.
Thank you for your presentation. I was on the Chandler Bikeway, and I noticed a sign that says no motorized vehicles allowed. And I also saw another sign that said speed limit 15 miles per hour. So it seems as if I've seen plenty of e-bikes on the Chandler Bikeway, and I don't have a laser gun to know how fast they're going, but it seems like there's quite a few of them on the Chandler Bikeway, but yet the sign says no motorized vehicles. So
just to clarify, you're allowed to ride class 1 and 2 e-bikes on a class 1 on all bikeways. And a bike path, the Chandler Bike Path, is a bikeway. So just class 3 cannot ride there. There's no signage up for that, which we need to improve upon. We need to work with our community departments to help improve upon signage. The 15 mile per hour is a great thing, but that's going to be incumbent upon the rider to not go that fast, right? The only one of these bikes with a speedometer, and has to have a speedometer, is class 3 because it goes 28 miles per hour. The other bikes don't have to have one, so how is somebody really going to know that they're doing in between 15 and 20 miles per hour.
Right.
And the confusion is motorized, that previously motorized was not a bicycle. It was not a scooter or anything else. That was like your moped, your other type of gas engine or other type of vehicles. This created confusion when the vehicle code now changed e-scooters are now called motorized scooters. And it gives the definition of powered by an electric motor. But that signage, there's a little bit of a conflict there because when that signage was put up on the bike path, that did not have to do with the scooters being defined as motorized scooters.
Today, motorized vehicles, I don't know what class, call them, on our hiking trails, like above the nature center, legal or not legal?
So there, unfortunately, we have to update those rules. There is some rules on what can go, but our definitions do not meet these vehicles. I don't want to call them vehicles, so it doesn't meet the devices, the bicycles, the scooters and whatnot. It talks about a lot of motorized, which is gas powered, the old school type of things we think about that were motorized, bikes, a motorized, like a moped, a scooter. Those actually had gas powered engines. Things have changed and we haven't kept up with that. So we need clear definitions on what's allowed and what's not allowed. And the good news is Parks and Rec has the ability to prohibit devices from being on all of those trails.
When I did my last ride-along, one of the calls we went out on was an e-bike crash on Walnut by the golf course.
Right.
And that situation it was a single vehicle, I'm using the term vehicle, involved, and there were two people and a dog on the on the e-bike, and basically the driver coming down the hill lost control, and it ended up with the driver being transported to St. Joe's.
Yes.
It was a bad one. And it just seems like all these definitions, it just makes the situation highly complicated. Because it's like, this is a this, and this is a that. But it just seems I would like to see the council take up, especially on sidewalks, like no motorized vehicle could go over 5 miles an hour. So, I mean, you don't want to limit people in motorized wheelchairs or mobility scooters for seniors or something of that nature, but I think it makes sense to have an actual speed limit on the sidewalk. It's the old joke, if you don't like the way I drive, stay off the sidewalk.
Right.
Thank you for your presentation again.
Thank you.
I'll look over this side to make sure I'm not ignoring you all over here. Well, let's jump in Layla and then Romick.
Okay. Thank you for that. That was really helpful. And I'll just say first, I hear it on the hillside too. So I live near Kenneth, and I hear what can only be one of those type of bikes that you had on that slide. And I haven't ever gone out there and be able to see who it was, but I certainly hope it's not a minor, a young kid, because they're going way too fast, and drivers drive way too fast. They don't stop at stop signs, especially on Kenneth. And I've heard unfortunately many accidents, honking for near misses and that all day as I'm working from home. So definitely a concern. And I just have a few questions. So, and again, these are anecdotally, so, I'm not expecting, hard statistics here, but do you find that the people involved in the collisions, are there a lot of youth, or is it more so folks over 18? Is it young adults, like kind of 20 to 30? Like, is there any pattern there that it's, more this group or that group?
Yeah,
Just
some
curious.
pedestrians, but primarily older adults. And that's the strange thing across the state, is that it's typically older than what you would think is riding these devices.
Okay.
So, some of the 20, like mid 20 to mid 30 range and older. So
Yeah.
it's not predominantly juveniles.
It's not predominant. Okay, that's helpful. Second question, similarly, anecdotally, do you find that the people who are riding the bikes or the scooters are generally commuting, running errands, or are they just riding it, recreationally kind of thing? Just wondering if there's any.
I can only speak for the city of Burbank, but it's
Yeah.
more people recreational use, because we don't have like commercial shared use mobility device issues in the city of Burbank. But it's more recreational usage.
Okay. And then last thing, so I know, we've seen it on the department social media, and I think most people are big fans. We see when the department impounds cars for, reckless speeds or racing, right, in the streets, things like that. Does the current code, and you had alluded to this a little bit in your slides, but does the current code allow to impound these vehicles? Do you have a way to even do that? I mean, if it is allowed? Or write tickets, like what does that look like in terms of
Right,
violations?
so
Yeah.
the devices themselves that fall within legal classifications, we can't take that for somebody. If we give somebody a violation ticket, it's an infraction. Now, the ones that fall outside of the classifications, when you're talking about some of those things that look like electric motorcycles that go 65 miles per hour, that's an electric motorcycle. That needs a license plate. You need to pay registration. It's got to have a VIN number on there. You got to put blinkers, headlights, brake lights, everything to make it street legal. So we could actually take those devices for a legal operation. But the issue now becomes, because we haven't kept up with the pace of this stuff, is how do we do it properly? So when you impound somebody's car, we have to give them a right to appeal that, an impound hearing, so there's several things that need to be thought out as far as the legislators before we can move forward with doing that properly. Right now, we would take it for something like property for safekeeping and give them the ability to come pick it up later, right? But we got to be careful with that. Because when you're seizing or taking somebody's property, you want to make sure that you have that appeal process for them to have a hearing to see if it was legal or valid.
Romick?
Thank you, sir. Well, she actually answered I did ask
Okay.
a question I wanted to get answers for. And thank you, Lieutenant Farmer, for that wonderful presentation.
Perfect. Ann?
Perhaps not actual questions. So to me, it's just overwhelming. The fact that you could do a report, which was great, is amazing because it's like every day something's changing. There's something else in the news. So one, my concern is that we're looking at age restrictions, speed restrictions, where you can actually ride restrictions, and helmet and other safety device restrictions. So that seems a very difficult task. Second, I watched the 60 Minutes special on e-bikes, and I was looking around in preparation for this, and I saw that you can actually take a Class 3 bike and take off the speed restrictor.
Right.
And now this bike that maxes out at 28, you can go up to 50, 60, rider's choice.
Depending on the motor size, yes, and that's why they implemented the no tinkering. You cannot, once you start messing with the motor, it makes it illegal. That's where we come in, where we're giving citations and fines. It's just super complicated for us when you have so much going on. I can tell you right now, your average cop cannot look at an e-bike and go, hey, that's a class 1, 2, or 3. They just
You
can't do
tinkered.
it. So you literally would have to stop somebody and look to see if it has the proper markings, and if it does, then it tells you exactly what it is. But it's very difficult. Some of these that look like those electric motorcycles are actually e-bikes. They're just designed to look like that electric motorcycle. So it makes it very difficult for us and the public.
I haven't seen it, but has the police noticed any increase in kids riding e-bikes mostly to, I guess, or from school?
Yes, absolutely, this last year. It didn't really impact us till last year. More in the beach communities, but now it's coming inland.
It's coming to us?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You included it in the presentation, so I figure it's fair game to ask this, and I'm just totally curious. You showed a copy of the Blue Vehicle Code book.
Right.
Do officers have to memorize that, or do they have access to it somehow in the field?
So we've gone to the digital era, and thank goodness I used to have to carry that book around.
Okay.
You can't memorize it. There's a lot of administrative functions in there and sections that
Okay.
are purely administrative. You
Okay.
have your enforcement, which are violations of the law, and then you have equipment violations. You have all these different rules, but the officers have to know the basics, right? So on this topic, we're going to have to educate our officers on the basics. I would be probably the most knowledgeable in this area because I was the traffic lieutenant and because I have to produce information on this. but we have to do a good job educating them and also an educational campaign for the public. One of the biggest issues we see is just rider inexperience and riders not being educated on the dangers of these things and what the rules are. So I think that's the push, right? The educational campaign followed by the enforcement.
Thank you. And second question, who's everything we're talking about related to e-bikes and all the issues that we're facing, is there a particular detail that's enforcing that right now within the city, or is it any patrol officer that's involved in enforcing that? And I'm also wondering, do we still have a bicycle patrol?
So primarily this traffic would be the experts because they focus on traffic violations. But any patrol officer, any police officer on the street can do the enforcement for this. Do we have a bike patrol? Currently due to staffing issues, it's not something as frequent as we were doing before, especially in the downtown area. Would it be a great and a luxury to have that? Absolutely, because that would be great enforcement, especially if it was done on somebody on a bike. And I would suggest giving them e-bikes so that there's a little bit of familiarity, and then there could be good educational opportunities rather than strictly heavy-handed with enforcement. We could have conversations.
That's helpful, and I'm thinking of the cost associated with that if we were to go with e-bikes for that. I'm also thinking about, there's also this came up just a couple days ago. What's the opposite of a nexus, a conflict between policies or protocol? Because I know that we have, with some exception, we have a no chase policy within the city of Burbank, within the police department. So you're describing people getting away, if you will, on higher powered e-bikes or illegal e-bikes, and then that might result in an e-bike officer chasing, and that's just stuff that would have to get worked out and kind of walked through. So I'm just raising that as an issue and a concern that would have to be figured out. Any other comments?
How do you enforce anything with an unlicensed individual?
You mean as far as not possessing a driver's license, or you're talking about license on the vehicle?
Okay, I was that 14-year-old father police officer that they took his mini bike away from for riding where it wasn't supposed to. But they, like you said, they took it away, and I had to go down there with my father to get it back. That was my punishment. I would have rather had the police officer handle it, but but that was how it was handled. But how does it nowadays? You said and you even talked about the complication of taking it, because it would essentially it's contraband if it doesn't meet the criteria. So I can see where you'd have the right to take it, but
We could take it as evidence of a crime.
But how would you ticket somebody who doesn't have a driver's license?
And that's one of the biggest issues we have. We have to rely upon our investigative knowledge and skill set to get that information. But one of the biggest issues you run into with people on bicycles is most of them oddly enough, don't have a wallet and don't have an ID on them. So it could be very time consuming, very contentious. Most people ask us, why aren't we doing anything better than bothering people on bicycles? But it's a pure safety issue. It's problematic, but we're able to figure out, we use our experience and skill sets to identify individuals and to issue them tickets. But we still take property, like I said, we just have to be careful. I'd rather see a process for these instances than us simply taking something as evidence of a crime or, as contraband. I'd like to see an actual process for this.
Mike, go ahead.
Even the problem of impoundment of bikes with lithium batteries, which you don't know where these batteries ever came from, and there's been enough fires, especially in New York City, caused by e-bikes. So I don't know if you even want them in your station.
Yeah, luckily we have that parking structure. We'll put it off in no man's land. It'd be safe. But the good news is the safety standards for these batteries. It was a long time coming.
Fantastic, thank you. Any other comments from commissioners? Paul?
It wasn't too long ago, I'm thinking about a year, and the chief read off basically the criteria. And, meaning gas vehicle, things of this nature. And I literally said, that means a Tesla doesn't need a license plate. And he just acknowledged that regulations haven't caught up with technology yet. So that's where we're at. We're just one step behind the electric four-wheel vehicles, and now we're trying to get on the two-wheel. Unfortunately, this is a younger population, and so therefore I think the judgment is less and the accidents will be more catastrophic.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'd heard, Mike, do you have a comment?
Yeah, if it's Tuesday and it's odd and it's code number something, what a pain in the butt that must be. And I'm sure that our councilman may report that it's going to be a difficult decision in understanding all the innuendos of or details of the different kinds that you have of equipment that you have to work with. Is there a way, you're trying to simplify this in your recommendation to the council. Is there a way to, rather than put the onus on the type of equipment that they're working is on the individual driving it, and how they're driving it, that could cover more from the uni-wheel to an e-bike or electric bike?
Right. I think it has to be a review of all these devices, because tomorrow a new device that we haven't seen is going to come out. So it's going to be hard to put it simply on the operator versus the devices, and where is it safe and where is it not safe? I think that's the biggest issue. Where do we not want these devices? Because of the speed. That, I think, will simplify this. Like, where do we want to prohibit use to keep people safe, primarily pedestrians, but also from themselves with the vehicles, right? Because it's a shared space with the roadways. So I think it's a better approach to look at where are we going to limit the use, and then what are the rules we want to use to regulate proper use, and is there any other requirements we want to see upon the actual operators? Because it's going to be very difficult. The more of these devices come out, this is going to be extremely difficult, especially, we mentioned 5 miles per hour on the sidewalk. Now you're putting the onus on the officer to determine how fast it was and how fast should we let them go? Should we really give them a ticket for this? I would rather see prohibited use on the sidewalks. Just don't be on the sidewalk. But now you're going to have the community, if this grows, they're going to ask, well, where am I going to ride it safely? So is the city going to be responsible for trying to find that area that's a safe area for them to ride? And it's going to come down to how many people, or how big of a population in our community is going to ask for this. So that's something we have to look at.
If we develop local regulations, you mentioned before, a couple of cities have done that throughout the state. Does that add to the confusion? I can do this over in Glendale, but I can't do it over in Burbank or something,
Right, it's great for the cops, especially when it's horrible for the citizen, because now they have to know different regulations every time they cross the city line.
Yeah.
So it is preferred that this comes from the state and that we're consistent. When you go city to city, it becomes frustrating for the citizen who is, how did I know I crossed your city boundary, and now I'm going to get a citation for doing something that's legal in this city but illegal over here. So that's something that has to be addressed as well and well thought out.
Thank you for your presentation. That brought up a lot of discussion. Thank you.
Yeah. So I heard three recommendations that actually came up from the discussion here. The first one was making the recommendation. Again, I don't know the legalese in terms of how this has to be put language-wise, but it would be that pedestrians have the right-of-way on sidewalks. That's one of the recommendations I had heard, just to keep it simple. A second thing that I'd heard was that a recommendation that signage for e-bike rules be put in public locations where e-bikes are being used. So the Chandler Bike Path, other locations where e-bikes are being used. And then the third one, which gets a little more complicated because it would be making a recommendation. I don't know if it would either be directly to Parks and Rec or through the city council to Parks and Rec about make a recommendation for the trails above the city of Burbank that are the responsibility of Parks and Rec. Those are the recommendations that I heard.
I'm going to ask you to add one, and I'm going to ask the lieutenant for help because this was before my e-bike. I was on transportation provision, so I thought it was my responsibility to ride it, and I wasn't in condition to do so. But there is a bike path between Olive and like Glen Oaks that we should include as well. It's supposed to be the extension of the Chandler Bike Path. We haven't quite got the connection yet.
Okay.
But there is a bike path that's a lot less visible, which I think makes it more, I don't want to say dangerous, but more, more.
The one by the flood control center?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I think would make it more prone to being abused, but we just want verbiage to make sure that was included.
It's the bike path that used to run by a brewery, correct?
See, now I wouldn't know that.
Okay.
What's the name of that bike path, sir?
The Burbank Bikeway. That's you'll have access when this is published. We'll also make sure that I work with Ms. Nakamura to get you the link. But you'll have access to the staff report, but in that staff report, I included the bikeway, that's the Burbank Bikeway. There's actual more construction plan for that to extend that. I don't have specifics on that, but all these are all the areas that we need to think about.
Okay, Mike?
So all bikeways in the city of Burbank will have the same rules and regulations.
It differs, right? Because as of right now, you can only ride certain classifications on certain bikeways. So the issue becomes, what is City of Burbank going to do, right? And you don't want to conflict with state law.
Right.
Because when you create that conflict, you definitely don't want to conflict with state law. So that also has to be addressed and thought of when we look at making areas we want to prohibit use.
I would say that our recommendations should have consistency.
Yeah.
So to make it easier for the residents.
Yeah, so
Right.
keeping it as simple as possible, but and also understanding that this presentation is going to be made to city council, and we want to support the city council and what the city council wants to do with this as well. So keeping our recommendation simple, I think, is entirely appropriate as well. So,
That's why my recommendation about the sidewalk was kind of all-encompassing for current and future technologies.
right.
Pedestrians have the right of way.
So again, the first recommendation was pedestrians have the right of way on sidewalks?
Yes. period.
Okay.
It doesn't mean you can't ride there, it just means you have to
Yeah.
yield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second is the recommendation that there be signage for e-bike rules.
In places where any bicycling is high frequency.
That's,
I would say the largest concentrated areas of
yeah.
expected bike usage.
I would even hesitate to get into that level of detail to allow the flexibility. That's why, with Mike's recommendation, yeah, so that, but we're recommending that there be signs for e-bike rules, okay? Signs for e-bike rules.
Visible sign.
Visible signage for
And-
e-bike
and
rules.
just- I apologize for jumping in here, but when I was on the Transportation Commission, at one point in time, staff told me that their Chandler Bike Path already had sign pollution. And because I wanted a helmet sign put on the bike, go figure, that's one of my passions. And I was told there was sign pollution, there's already too many signs. I think we could probably take down some of the signs that are there and combine them,
Right.
like you said, the speed limits or whatever. So if that argument comes up, we can make the recommendation.
So the third recommendation I have then would be, we'll go with the second, but add to it, visible signage for e-bike rules in areas managed by Parks and Recreation. That would include like up in the hillside and everything.
Areas of bike usage. I mean, keep it very generic.
Well, this is specifically about Park and Rec, the recommendation of Park and Rec as opposed to the police department and city council for municipal code.
Is the Transportation Commission, not Park and Rec.
Right.
So I'm just curious. All right, I don't want to eliminate one together.
Yeah, well, we can make recommendations, but it's recommendations to those specific groups. But the Parks and Rec one is specifically about the hillside, because Parks and Rec manages that area.
Just so commission's aware, I do work with Parks and Rec, and they're updating their rules and regulations for their hiking trails
Okay.
and park pathways.
Okay.
One of those would be to prevent the use of e-bikes and e-scooters on the trails, as well as
Okay.
on public park access roads.
So if we're recommending it, it would be redundant, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
those updates are going to be coming in the next few months.
Okay.
But that's one of the intents of Parks and Rec is to update those regulations to address the e-bike
okay.
usage.
Okay.
Do you know, does that include signage, new signage, or?
It will be.
or,
It will
you
be
know,
signage. It
amended
will
signage?
be definitely signage. I've advised them of signage.
Okay.
And then obviously the rules and regulations for the public usage of the parks.
And they haven't made final decision on that yet.
No,
Okay.
it's still being updated
Okay.
as we speak.
So we could still recommend. Okay,
Sure.
cool. Mike?
One of the things to be aware of for the Parks and Recreation Park on the hillsides.
Yeah.
Is riders can start either in the city of LA or in the city of Glendale. And I think we should try that our rules should be kind of the same, so these people know they're on the hill, but how are they supposed to know what jurisdiction they're on?
So recommending shared rules for adjacent municipalities?
Attempt to share.
Okay. 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 Sherry, I'll be able to help you out with this later on as well. Ann, go ahead.
Is there, I know Parks and Rec will have their things and we're doing our recommendations. Is there any one person who makes sure at the end of the day it all rhymes?
City manager.
Oh, great. Congratulations.
Or their designee.
I see just a lot of things,
Yeah.
This city's very complex. There's different departments. We do have communication amongst the departments on imposing new regulations, new rules of conduct, things like that. So it's not just unilateral decisions on
Yeah.
within a department.
And the good news is that the city attorney's office is everywhere.
Yes, in the shadows.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Councilmember Rosati, I want to just open it up. Is there anything that you're hearing that would be helpful as a recommendation to the city council, or anything that you're hearing that you might have concerns about?
Thank you, Commissioner and Commission members, for your time and putting in the hard work. I'm speaking as an individual. I might be dating myself, but back in the day when I had a bike, you had to register the bike. And if it wasn't registered, you get a ticket. Is that still the case?
Not the case any longer.
Maybe we should do that. Maybe every single bike and e-bike should have a registration. So that way, when you get pulled over by an officer, if you don't have your registration, or if you have registration, then you can identify who the person is and write them a ticket.
It would be a conflict with the state law that
Mm.
there are places that offer that as a voluntary basis. However, the state has mandated that if people don't participate, you can't prevent them from riding the bike.
So you can't have a local ordinance?
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
The other thing is, I'm probably a little bit stricter on this. I don't want to see anything with that motorized on the Chandler Bike Path, downtown Burbank, anywhere where there's high density of people walking. I think it could be really dangerous. I have a 2-year-old son, and sometimes I'm walking my dogs, and a guy on an electric bike is ripping down the sidewalk, and I'm forced to go to the side with the dogs, and it's crazy. And then lastly, I live in the Western Rancho, and we're seeing a lot of the motorcycle type e-bikes on the horse trail. So we don't have any signage on that side of the town, but I think we need to concentrate on the equestrian community and the rules there. I know this is really complex, and you're gonna have to really have a robust discussion, but I don't want to see the skateboards. I don't want to see the bikes motorized on the Chandler Bike Path. I think you're just looking for trouble. Most of the people there are recreational, taking a stroll. If you really, really want to crank it up, you're going on a bike path. So I think we're looking for trouble when we kind of mix the two. Downtown Burbank, maybe along Magnolia, where people are strolling and looking at antique furniture, then a guy's ripping down the sidewalk. So I'm probably going to be on the stricter side of this, and want to see a real prohibition against mixing pedestrians and these motorcycle bikes. And understanding that some people are in wheelchairs and scooters. So again, we're going to have a robust conversation to make sure that everyone's welcomed, but at the same time, we protect our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
for the
that.
time. Yeah.
Really appreciate that. Romit, go ahead.
Lieutenant Former, in regards to schools, any concerns around schools?
Yeah, not currently, because it's not really operated on school grounds. The kids know where to go for the bike racks. The concerns are travel from home to the schools. But once they get to the school,
Not really.
I haven't had the schools call me and state things are out of control with the e-bikes. Because like I said, the kids generally know where to go to store them so that as they get onto campus.
Okay, thank you.
So I want to recap the with the comments that we've made, the recommendations. It sounds like we're making, if as long as nobody's having a problem with any individual one, we can make the recommendation as a whole. If not, we might want to break them out. The first one is that we'd like to recommend to City Council that pedestrians have right-of-way on sidewalks, period. The second is that there be signage for e-bike rules on all bikeways. The third is we have the recommendation to Parks and Recreation that there be signage for e-bike rules on all of their areas as well. We're not doing that yet. No, we're going more. We're using consensus on this one. quick question of clarification based on the council member's comment. Are the equestrian trails, are those managed by Parks and Recreation or by another group?
So that's by Parks and Rec.
Perfect.
And they have the authority. We have the authority to do ordinances on all bikeways and
Okay.
everything. It's just, like I said, we got to be careful about, we have to take a real look at what we want to limit and what we don't want to limit.
Right.
Is the Mariposa Street Bridge City of Burbank or us?
Is the Mariposa Bridge is ours, and unfortunately, I lived this for several years. It's an extension of Mariposa, but once you get to the other side, you now run into a lot of confusion, but it's LA Parks. So you have the park range, the LA Park Rangers, Park Police. And then once you get into certain jurisdictions over there, you're going to run into Glendale and LAPD.
So you're going to love number 4 then. Number 4 is that we share these recommendations for all adjacent municipalities.
I just thinking somebody going down over that bridge with a horse and you getting passed by a motorcycle,
Oh, just so you know, they passed that several years ago. You can't have bikes, any type of bike on that bridge.
past it.
Past it, you can have quite a few things. So the trails would be interesting, but the bridge itself is
The
protected from
rule
that.
was for pedal bikes, and now we're expanding.
Right.
Ann?
Is there any thought to a recommendation or something where we have to consider, and I take what you said about Chandler Bike Path to heart, evaluating where there might be signage necessary if we decide that there's a prohibited use of e-bikes? I mean, if you go back to what was the purpose of the Chandler Bike Path, it was for enjoyment. That if most people who walk it walk like they'll go from this part to that, and then they turn back and they go around, and
Right.
lots of dogs and lots of baby strollers.
Okay.
I'm not sure that people who, forgive me, I'm not sure if you need to use the Chandler Bike Path if you want to get your e-bike, ride your e-bike from here to here. Can't you ride in the street?
Yeah.
So is there any concern about signage that is prohibited use of e-bikes?
So that's what we're recommending, and what we're not doing is we're not getting into the level of granularity to allow the appropriate authorities to make decisions about what the specific signage would say. But based on our recommendations, again, is 1, pedestrians have right-of-way on sidewalks. 2, signage for e-bike rules on all bikeways. 3, recommendation to Parks and Recreation for the same. And 4, sharing these recommendations to adjacent municipalities.
And one more thing on that, just because of where I live, it became real visible. The Chandler Bike Path is considered to be part of the thoroughfare from, I believe, the Orange Line. And when at one point as part of the commission, I went through a training with Metro and the e-bikes and things of that nature. But for a long time, every morning you'd see 6 or 7 electric scooters just dumped at the end. And to their credit, the eBird or whatever, they would come pick them up. But people would get off the train or get off the bus, take an e-scooter down and go to work in one of the businesses on Mariposa Street or somewhere in there. But they would use the Burbank Bikeway or the Chandler Bikeway, as a means of commuting. And the biggest problem with commuting in this city is what we call the last mile. You get from Palmdale to the train station, but you can't get from the train station to Warner Brothers. You're driving your car. And that's the same principle here. So it was fulfilling that need. They do have e-bikes down there now. That's where I was first introduced to e-bikes with that commission. But, and I haven't seen those scooters in a long time on the bike path, but I know they were being used as a connection from that station to Mariposa Street.
So the recommendations, the 4 recommendations we got, is there any opposition to those?
I don't have opposition, but I just wanted to ask if we kind of, to Ann's point about there's, different categories of recommendations we could make, or do we have any recommendations about age, minimum age requirement or requirement for a helmet? And some of those might just be covered by the state law, but I don't know, is there a gap anywhere that you could foresee?
That's why those assembly bills for those counties were specifically enacted. And those only run through 2029, so those aren't permanent.
And they don't apply here, right? They're just applying.
Correct. And then,
In those unique
it's
places.
something you don't want to conflict with the state law on that. But you can get permission. It is something that we could seek from the state legislator to do a similar program. But these are going to play out till 2029, and I guess we could review from there.
Okay.
And I'm really happy with where we're going, because years ago, I sat down with Assemblymember Portantino, and he flat out told me the Green Lobby will never let you block the e-bikes, that it was supposed to be part of our ecosystem improvement and getting cars off the road. And I'm glad to see that safety is kind of sticking its nose in there somewhere, and we're getting a little more, because I agree with it. I take my e-bike places that I would have normally taken a car, just because it's easier to park. But I like to think I'm an adult and I'm responsible.
So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend those 4 recommendations that you had listed to the police department.
All right. To the city council.
City
To
council.
the city council. And to,
Well,
actually,
they're making the report, right?
they're making the report. We're making the recommendation to city council, and one of our recommendations is to Parks and Recreation, and a second recommendation is to adjacent municipalities.
All right.
So, I hear you though. So I have a motion. Do I have a second? Mike seconds. Against my better judgment, can I open it up for any discussion on that motion? Sweet.
Just to
Oh.
clarify that we would, as a commission, draft a letter and submit that
Correct.
that letter.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. And that would be done, the executive team of Paul Romick and I would put that together on behalf of the commission. We can do it formally, so that way you've got something that can go along with the report that's coming from the police department. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So we've got the motion, we've got the second, we've had discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? That's unanimous. Okay, any other discussion on this item?
Thank you.
Lieutenant Frommer, thank you for your time. You started this presentation saying you were going to be concise and brief, and we stretched it out, so we thank you for your time.
If you could remind my acting.
We
chief,
will.
Sacco,
We will remind him of that.
apparently, I didn't fully embrace it today, but I tried my
No, you did. You did. It wasn't you, it was us.
He held up his head into the bargain.
Yeah, in the interest of Valentine's Day, it wasn't you, it was us.
I appreciate the questions and concern. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, so we're moving on to item G3, which is discussion on and dissemination of promotional materials related to awareness of domestic violence. Ms. Nakamura, before the meeting, shared with all of us information that officers currently have and distribute. And this is actually a discussion item for us as a commission. I believe Mike Chapman was the one that had brought this agenda item forward. So, Mike, we'll let you get started.
It was in response to Sergeant Lawfer's presentation way back in November about domestic violence, and we had made some discussion about getting the word out about options and links for resources for people that are experiencing domestic violence. My task was to contact the Burbank Water and Power
Yep.
to see if we could put something in their billing that would be a source for that. I've got some information about that. I don't know if how far we need to go there, or
Go ahead and share the information that you've
all
got.
right. What they said is that we can do that.
Great.
There's a different type. I had in my mind, I was thinking like a piece of paper that we folded in with the bill.
Mm-hmm.
That was not their idea at all, which makes sense. They've got a space on the bill, and they have opened that up for messages. So we couldn't put everything on here, but we could put the QR code or some information about the website to go to, so that they could get more information, but it would be available.
So I don't know offhand, I love this, and I don't know offhand if there was one place on either the Burbank Police Department's website that has this information. We can go look.
Sort of does, yeah.
Our website does have direct links to domestic violence information.
Is it at one page at the Burbank Police Department website? that has that? So like if I were to look at one website, would it have a listing of all those resources?
Well, you would go to the our website
Right.
and navigate there by clicking on 2 or 3 links, and then you would get to that page within
Okay.
our website.
So thank you for that, because Mike, what you're recommending, I heard you say that you were talking about producing like a QR code, and which could then be used to take directly to a website, which could be that specific website.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the water power manager, advertising manager, said that wouldn't cost us anything.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Paul?
Could we consider putting, I love the idea of adapting, I think that's wonderful, but could we also put on the 311 app? I know it's not being used as extensively as we'd like it to be, but I think the more information it's there, the more we'll get people to use it.
So the police department doesn't manage the 311 app. Another
I understand, I'm just saying we recommend it.
Go ahead and finish the thought, and then we'll
I
come back.
apologize.
Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say that we don't manage the 311 website. That's through community development. So that would be through their shop, if they would be willing to do that. Certainly, this body could make that recommendation, I suppose.
Okay, so the first recommendation is to include a link from, first recommendation is I want to clarify, Mike's recommendation is to include a link or a QR code that would take BWP bill recipients directly to the Burbank Police Department's website that has this information published already. Great, okay, so that's one recommendation. Leila, go ahead.
As related to that, just to have a phone number on there with the QR code, because, in a crisis, maybe you just want to call someone. Maybe you don't have a phone that has internet, et cetera. You don't have control of your phone, right? Somebody could be, so you want to save that number and call from well, there is no payphone, but you know what I'm saying.
Is there a specific?
What phone number would you suggest?
Well, there's those yellow cards that you have in front of you are actually the cards that officers provide victims of domestic violence on any sort of call, whether there's a criminal aspect or there isn't. These yellow cards are folded generally in half, and the officers hand those out to the individuals on the call. So depending on the resources, every call is going to be different, or every need is going to be different. So depending on the resources that individual needs, it's going to be a different phone number. As you see on that card, there's probably 50 phone numbers
Right.
On there, depending on the need. So you could put the police department phone number on there. You could put maybe the most needed phone number, but it's going to be a number of phone numbers that you're going to end up having to put on there if you're trying to cover all the bases.
Would 211 work, since do they refer folks to different services, or would that not be?
So I've got experience with 211
Yeah.
based on the recent fires.
Okay.
211 it's a wonderful resource because it's got a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
and it's a problem because it's got a lot of stuff. So I'd still recommend 211. So for example, you could call 211, as noted on here. Excuse me. We could call 211 if we need resources for domestic violence. We could have also called 211 if we wanted a 1-week free stay in an Airbnb because we were as a result of the fires. So there's a wide range that's covered in 211. So I'm not sure. I like the idea, but I'm not sure if we would want to put the whole world out there. It'd be kind of like, for more information, go look on the World Wide Web. Yeah.
I think Mike's initial idea of the QR code with a phone number for those of us that are not quite that advanced, that then could be widely distributed. It could be used for water and power. It could be used on the 301 website. It could be used wherever. They keep it simple principle, and once that's developed, it's a avenue into a whole sorts of information.
So, yeah, and I agree that folks are not necessarily all going to be comfortable or wanting to use the QR code as well. So 211 might be the right number. My concern is it may not be as specific as you would like it to be. But we could. There's no harm in doing it, I don't think. Other comments or other thoughts? Okay, so, council member, please.
Thank you, Chair and Commission members. Again, thank you. I love this conversation. I was wondering if you brought FSA into the fold of this conversation.
So FSA, so there's a list, and actually, Sherry, do you have extra copies of this card by chance? I will pass mine along as well, as you can. There's, and Councilmember Rosati, there's thank you for handing that down. So the problem I'll use the 211 analogy. 211 is great because it'll have all of the resources, but it may be overwhelming for when somebody's navigating that. We can get specific about FSA, but then FSA is one of a number of resources, as you can see on the card as well.
What I'm saying is, would they have some recommendations to collaborate with you?
Oh.
Like what's a good way of getting the message out, or what's a good number, or
Gotcha.
something like that?
They might.
Anyways, just a thought.
Yeah, thank you for that. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I'm looking at all of the resources here, and I'm thinking about some of them that I have worked with as well, and they will, you're absolutely right, they will have recommendations on places to connect with as well. The most important thing, I think, is to get people connected. So I'm actually, I was concerned about it, but I'm actually on the fence about 211 right now and wondering whether we should include 211 or if that would be too overwhelming. Mike?
Who runs 211?
Los Angeles County.
So is that different than the Los Angeles County Vine Service?
Yes. The Vine service, as it's labeled out here, the Vine service is if there's an offender that's about to get released from jail.
Okay.
Romick?
I think a great organization that we can possibly, or the department could possibly reach out to is Zonta of Burbank. Zonta works directly with domestic violence victims. Well, it doesn't work directly with domestic violence victims, but they advocate for it. They do drives, fundraising, supply drives, you name it. And they're a great resource because they have a network of other organizations that they're connected with. And also Zonta itself is international. So disseminating this information like locally, and I'm sure they can help in that respect.
Well, I think, aren't we kind of looking for a one-stop shop here?
I think that's what we're looking for, yeah.
And I like your idea, because I agree. I'm sure they have resources that we have not listed here.
Sure.
But maybe what we should do is add that to the list, if they have some suggested resources.
Rather than one-stop shop, I'm thinking the tip of a funnel. You go in there, and then it exposes all these resources for you, so you can pick which one fits.
Right.
Fits the best. So one stop, and one stop would mean one phone number.
Yeah.
I'm saying, go into this QR code, and there'd be several descriptions, which one fits you.
You know,
So we can do multiple motions and everything. We're planning in. I'm gonna make one motion right now. The motion is that we ask Mike to continue to pursue the discussion about creating a QR code that Burbank Water and Power can produce in the bill that would then direct people to the Burbank Police Department's website. So that's one motion. Do I have a second for that? Paul, I have a second. Anybody, all in favor? Any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, that's one. So that's one thing and Mike, we're asking you to pursue that. It's not to make it happen completely, but it's to move that forward so that in working with Burbank Water and Power.
all right.
To plan that out.
Is your second motion going to have what information will be in that little box that we want to include?
Not yet, because unfortunately, what I'm hearing is that we're going to have to come back to this agenda item with the second thing that I'm going to recommend. The second recommendation is that we've identified a number of agencies, including Family Services Agency of Burbank, Zonta, the DV Safety Hotline, and 211. I'd like to make the motion that we have commission members make phone calls to various resources that are identified here, and that those commission members report out during the commission reporting out item at the next police commission meeting. So that way we can. Second recommendation. Second motion is to have council member or commission members call, report back at the next meeting on the various resources that they've identified to know how easy it is to navigate those resources. So, for example, we could have a commission member call 211 and actually navigate that for themselves to figure out how would they get the resources for domestic violence. We can have a commission member call FSA, call or speak with somebody at Zonta, call the domestic safety hotline, so that way we have firsthand knowledge of what the resource outreach experience is like. So that's the second recommendation, that would make the calls and then report back at the next meeting. That's my motion. Do I have a second for that?
A second?
I've got a second from Paul.
Okay, I have a question.
We're open for discussion. What's the question about that?
Just to clarify, so you're suggesting that we call and not, in my mind, it was we're calling some of these places and asking, we're looking to add this information, et cetera. There are so many resources, and we want to have one number that folks can call to get an entry point, right? It's not that they're going to get every service at that number necessarily. It's just, what do you recommend, or what would you, as an expert and service provider in this,
Yes.
domestic violence? Is that what you're
Yes.
saying? Or, because the way you're saying it made it sound sort of like we're supposed to call and sort of like see, like, how it,
You're-
test it like as if we were calling
Yeah.
for that,
No, I don't want anybody to pretend that they're experiencing
that's
domestic
what I was
violence.
saying. Well, okay,
no,
because you're saying like
no.
firsthand calling, and I was like, I don't know if that's.
Call the
what we
finance,
wanna do. Okay.
as the council member recommended, we have commissioners call these various resources to identify whether they're an appropriate number and if they have any recommendations on who should be the primary
Yep.
place to call. And then the
Yep.
the commission members will report back out on that
Yep.
during the reporting out
Okay,
period at the
great.
next
Then
meetings.
Yep.
I think we're getting too complicated.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the list right now.
Okay.
And to me, the important things are which group is 24 hours. We can have 10, 20 groups, but if they're not 24/7, they're not of much use.
Great observation.
The other thing is, there's only one group which is bilingual.
Two, three,
that we're aware of.
three that are bilingual. Three
Oh,
on
I
the
see,
right-hand
yeah,
side.
Okay. But I'm just saying, these are the things which are important at the time. Is they're open and I can speak to them in my language. By giving more and more choices, it creates more and more questions and confusion.
I agree. We're not giving additional choices at this point. We're going through a list of identified resources to see if they're appropriate to include at this time.
I would think that the PD, to put it on their document, probably did a little research of which ones they would recommend.
Yep, they did. The reason we're having this conversation about making the phone calls is because not everyone may be, comfortable or have access to using a QR code to scan. So the QR code discussion is going to move forward. That planning is going to move forward. We're having this discussion because Layla was suggesting that there be a phone number that people call, and what would that phone number be?
Yeah.
So the work that we're doing would be to do that research to try to figure out what phone number or numbers would be appropriate to include.
James?
Yeah.
There's one other thing. When the person is calling, are they calling for help or are they calling for your help? For domestic violence or assault, should they be reporting the crime to you, obviously, and then getting a referral from you?
Generally, the way it works, if there is a crime where they have called the police department in regards to domestic violence, is our officers will respond, and they will conduct their investigation, and the individuals there will receive these cards. It's mandated by state law that we hand out these cards at a scene of domestic violence. So then the card would be handed out, and then the individual would choose for themselves, maybe with some assistance from the officer if asked, who should I reach out to, depending on the circumstances. Each one's going to be different.
But with this information, it may be that the person might call one of these resources and not up the level to a chargeable offense.
So you're asking if they call in advance of calling the police, if they are a victim of domestic violence and they call one of these numbers instead of calling the police.
Yeah.
Many of the individuals that answer that phone are going to be mandated reporters. If they're become aware of domestic violence, they would call us. So routinely, we do respond to calls third party, either through the county, through APS or DCFS, related domestic violence with the cross report. So we do respond to third party calls after the fact. Hey, there's been domestic violence, go out, and we then do an investigation after the fact. So that does happen, yes.
Good to know.
So the motion and discussion right now is on calling specific resources for commissioners to report back at the next meeting. I just want to make sure that we're focused on that, because I don't know if we want, just to clarify, I don't think we want people just calling the information number at the Burbank Police Department for all of this information, if they're not
I'll volunteer to call the first four.
Well, hold on, just to
Well,
clarify.
well, I mean, if somebody is suffering, if they feel as if they're victims of domestic violence,
Correct.
they absolutely need to call the police department, and we will absolutely respond.
Okay.
So there's no doubt about that, whether it's occurring in the moment,
Okay.
which would generally be a 911 call, either if it's your involvement or your neighbor's involvement or a family member's involvement. If it's something that happened yesterday or this morning or a couple days ago, then that's
Right.
probably the 238-3000 number.
Okay.
But we're certainly going to respond to any reports of domestic violence.
So listing the non-emergency number for Burbank PD along with that QR code would be an appropriate.
Absolutely, yeah, that's,
Okay,
I
that's,
perfect.
that's
just
not
would
a
worry
problem.
that someone would not call. Like, I wonder, like, on one hand, would most people know if they, one issue is people aren't willing to report, right? But if they are, I think probably most people know that they could call 911, right? When there's any kind of crime, right? Or I don't know, versus like, this is more, and it would need to be clear on the bill, right? This is for services, not.
Right.
This is not related to.
I mean, you could
know,
put something on
but-
there that says if you're, actively a victim, just like when you call a medical office, right?
Right.
The first thing you hear there is if you're suffering from a medical
Right.
emergency, hang up and call 911. You can put something on there that says, for current issues, call 911.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we could include that
Sure.
in that. Romick, and then we'll wrap up this motion.
So question, in regards to, are we talking about making this like a one-stop shop, like informational card, or?
No, we're talking about a posting, for this motion,
Right.
we're talking about vetting specific resources.
And so the question I have as far as vetting the resources, so what information are we coming back with in regards to like what bullet points should we look for? Like how do we know like what information we need to come back with?
It would be, so coming back to using the QR code as an example,
Right.
that would take people looking at the QR code, following that link, it would take them to the list of resources available at the Burbank PD website. So that's one of the resources that we're going to promote. We also are going to include both 911 and the non-emergency number with Burbank PD in that resource as well. The question that would go to these organizations is, hi, my name's James. Would this be an appropriate number to publicize if people are looking for domestic violence resources? That's the question. And then when we come back, we can vet what other ones we want to include in the resource, in the bill.
I guess to Commissioner Ellman's point, like, and I think maybe this is a little bit what you're asking, Robert, like, what are the questions we would ask? So one could be like, is it 24 hours? Do you have language, interpretation? Do you, I don't know, like, can you connect people to other services, right? If this is like a housing service or this is a, whatever it is, do you make, referrals? Do you have connections, throughout the county kind of thing?
Mike-
Like those would be, and then, so we can figure out which one we think is the appropriate one, right? to include?
Mike, is that keeping it simple the way you had recommended?
I am thinking of voting against this motion.
You can.
I think we should create a QR code which only points to these organizations right now which are on the yellow card.
We've already agreed to that.
Yeah, and then I think we can go ahead and further delve into it and see, bring in other organizations. But to get started, I think we should say the QR code should point to these organizations. Since they've already been vetted by the PD, it's a
Right.
great place to start.
We're doing that. That's happening.
Okay.
There's no question about that. We're talking about that next piece of vetting other organizations.
Well, I would agree with that too, but let's get something started before we go to step two. Let's get step one done.
Okay.
I think to limit it, I was under the understanding that we would just be probably selecting a phone number from this card. Like, so if we were gonna take that step to have commissioners call, that we would just be calling these numbers to figure out what's the one number here,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
So-
Not that we
so-
were opening it to like the whole, because that's.
So the numbers that were
they're
recommended,
infinite.
because not all the numbers are on there, the numbers that were recommended were Zonta, FSA, the DV Safety Hotline, and 211. Were
Okay,
there
so the only one not on here is Zonta.
Were there other
Okay.
numbers that folks were recommending that we call to vet right now?
Does the health services, mental health services in the department offer services for domestic violence?
Well, certainly if there's a crossover, obviously that's not their immediate charge. Our domestic family crimes unit is the unit that handles domestic violence-related calls. Our mental health unit obviously handles the mental health aspect, and sometimes there's significant crossover. So yes, if there's a crossover, they would absolutely be involved, and they would provide resources as appropriate.
And all of those are going to be available through either 911 or the non-emergency line. So that's already covered
Okay,
as
good.
well. So what I would need to close out this motion, who's going to call Zonta?
I have connections to Kiwanis, I can call something.
Paul, who's going to call FSA?
I would like to call them.
Ann? Who's going to call the DV Safety Hotline? Layla? And who's going to call 211?
Thank you.
Romick? Okay.
Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Domestic Violence Task Force.
Yeah.
The city with Zizette Mullins, Councilwoman Zizette Mullins, and Constantine Anthony are chair that group. And I'm a part of that group from the police
Okay.
department, as is the city attorney's office. The city manager's office, Courtney Patchett is on that committee. Zonta is on that committee, and several other groups. So they might be a resource that somebody on the commission might want to reach out to, because they're very energized they're very
Yeah.
passionate about this.
Yeah.
Their mission is exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
So somebody might want to reach out to them and see like what their suggestions are, and they may have very specific recommendations just from their specific group on what they can provide.
Okay. Do we have someone that would reach out? Mike? Okay. Mike Chapman will make that call. And so to close out the motion, all of you will be contacting those organizations and then reporting out during comment period at the next meeting. Because this is activity that they're doing outside of the meeting, reporting on what they've been involved in.
Yes, it's getting very close to an ad hoc subcommittee, but
Okay.
it's a full council or the full commission. So I'd just be very careful as to sharing any of this information
Yeah.
prior to the next meeting.
Does that make sense, everybody? And actually, speaking of which, we'll bring it up later on for announcements. We were going to talk about the Brown Act training. Okay, we'll talk about that later on. All right, so that's the motion. I've got a second. We've closed out discussion. All in favor of making those calls, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? One abstention? So it passes. All right, we're good there. Any other recommendations that people have? So we're going to be, Mike's going to be reaching out to BWP to start BWP to start the process to discuss what they need in order to put the material into the bill. And then a bunch of folks are making phone calls and reporting back out at the next commission meeting. And then we'll be able to hopefully tie this up after that. We may want to get into making an agenda item for the next meeting to wrap this up as well. Let's go Mike and then Romick.
So I was using step one and step two. That means that we will basically have a QR code with BWP to point people to these sites, and then we can expand on it to add other sites.
Correct. We haven't set a deadline and anything.
Yeah, I'm just saying, let's
Yeah.
start a process.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Romick?
I was thinking that since we've had a wonderful presentation last year from the city's PIO office, maybe engaging with them to see how we can share this information with.
I guess it's,
Is that a motion or just a?
Recommendation.
Just a recommendation that we communicate. Is that something, you've been in touch with the PIO
Yeah, I
and
can
other things
talk.
before. Is it okay to just, can you get in touch with them? Perfect. Excellent.
it's not really our purview because it's not under the city technically, but I'm just wondering and I'm happy to do it, but once we have that QR code with the phone number, just, checking with BUSD if maybe they can include that in some of their
Okay.
communications.
So that'll be further down the road.
Yeah, down the
Okay.
road and it's not under
Perfect.
the city, so I realize it's not exactly
Perfect.
our purview, but
All right. Any other recommendations on this item? Mike? Go
Just
for
to
it.
expand a little, that maybe with probably the first event coming up this year, it's going to be Police and Fire Service Day.
Do we have what's the date for that?
It's usually May or June.
May 10th.
Mother's Day weekend.
May
That
10th.
maybe we focus on domestic violence at our table at that event.
I like that. And so we'll,
I will make a motion that we have domestic violence as to make information available at our table at the Police and Fire Day.
Do I have a second? Romick seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? All right, there we go. Any other discussion related to this item? All right, we are moving on to item G4, which is general announcements by Captain Lasacco. Brief announcements regarding upcoming events and/or items of note related to the police department.
Thank you, Chair Coombs. Just a few items to note. Today, in fact, our CRO, Campos, and several cadets went to Burroughs High School, and they spoke and interacted with the students at their career day. And then next week, they're going to be doing the same thing at Burbank High. So it's a great opportunity for our officers and cadets to interact and maybe even recruit a couple good candidates in the next couple of years to join us. Friday, February 28th is Chief Albanese's last day. He's formally retiring, so I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. That's coming up very, very quickly. Saturday, March 1st, the department, through our CRO office and mostly Officer Campos, are putting on a women's self-defense seminar. At that seminar, they have about 30 individuals that were selected, first come, first serve. But there was she said like 60 or some odd people applied for that, so we had to turn people away, unfortunately. But the good news is we're going to be doing another one. So those folks are on a waiting list, and it looks like it's going to be a good class. Folks are really going to be engaged and are interested in it. On Wednesday, March 5th at REI in the Empire Center, we're going to be hosting another Coffee with a Cop. That's going to be from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. in front of REI at the Empire Center. So please come join us if you can. The 40th iteration of our Community Academy is underway. We started it a couple weeks ago. We met with the class. There's about 25, 30 individuals in that class. And it's basically the police academy that I think, the community academy that many of you have been to. And very engaged group, so they're well on their way, and they're pretty quickly going to have their Saturday at the range and go through all the fun toys. We have 3 graduates, one from LASD Academy and one at the Rio Hondo Academy coming up in the March 6th and March 16th. We'll be joining them for their graduation, so those 3 officers will be out on the street soon. And finally, on March 14th, Friday, BTAC is honoring the police department and the Burbank Police Officers Association at their annual gala. So several of us will be at that event, and I believe you all are invited to attend as well. That's going to be at the Castaway. And that's all the updates I have.
All right, thank you for that. So now we're going to move to item H, which is introduction of agenda items for future meetings. Couple things, I'm just noting that what we have on the agenda right now there's actually nothing on the agenda for March at this time. We have some dashboard items. The homeless engagement was postponed. We also have for March on the dashboard is equity in hiring and advancement, and also the review of annual crime statistics. All 3 of those items we would need to agendize. We were also talking about the potential for agendizing ongoing discussion about the domestic violence, bill publication thing. I don't know what to call it, but the follow-up. Thank you. The follow-up to item G3. So we need to just open it up for motions and seconds for agenda items. Romick?
I can start. In regards to, there's a current conversation about media all throughout the community. There was a city council meeting about goal setting about media, the media industry. So I want to agendize a full report on the film permitting process. Currently, and I think the patrol division, I believe, is governing that. From an initial request to the duration of responses to the process of approval, and exactly what needs to be considered for all that to happen. And that's my.
So you're motioning agendizing the film permit process for March?
For March.
For March. Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Paul. All in favor? Say aye. Any opposition? Oh, that's true. Will the department be able to do that by March?
Depending on what other items you agendize. Is there anything else for March that's actually happening yet?
There are 3 items that we may be considering for March on the dashboard.
So why don't we go through them and then we can prioritize them together and see which 2, 3, depending on how involved they are?
Sure. So, Romick, what we're going to do is, process here. Do we withdraw the motion, or do we just hold the motion open while we address these other issues?
Withdraw the motion at this point, and then we can readdress it.
Okay. Does that make? And we're going to do that this evening, but is it okay for you to
Yeah,
withdraw?
absolutely.
Okay, so Romick's withdrawing the motion momentarily. I've got a note for it. We're going to come back to it. Let's go ahead and continue with other agenda items. Other proposed agenda items?
Is the update on the parking enforcement, is that in June because of the amount of time it would take them to prepare it, or?
I think that had to do, it's already agendized, so it's already on the agenda for June. I'd have to go back and look at the notes as to why we planned it for June. I think that's, okay,
Okay,
okay.
thank you.
So I'll go ahead and move forward. I'd like to go ahead and motion that we agendize for March homeless engagement as it was following up on the homeless count. Romick seconds that. All in favor? Say aye. Any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, so
Can we
Oh.
focus that just a little bit?
So the agenda item is, the motion is to agendize the department's efforts in homeless engagement in the city of Burbank, including outreach efforts, resources, any changes in programs since we last received a presentation a year ago.
Will we have the results of the census by
No,
then?
you will not.
No.
So maybe we should move it out a little further until we have the numbers.
Did we just do it a couple months ago?
We did homeless engagement, there's three
Yeah.
different homeless presentations that were given the past few months.
Okay. Well, let's close out this process and let's see if we can do this. So, okay, any other discussion? Okay, let's see if we can do this.
Yeah, again, following up on what I said at the beginning of the meeting, I think that for those who haven't been involved in the homeless count, the positive experience that we've had with the Burbank Police is something that I would like to reinforce to the community. That the homeless count is not penal in any way, that it is 100% reaching out and seeking resources, and maybe by putting it out there in this way, we will have people make reference. I mean, I've called Sergeant Turner with people on my street, not to be critical, but concerned, and maybe we can extend people to do that.
So we just have to be careful that we're not getting into the details of the motion for the agenda items. I just want to lift that up. But I do appreciate the comment.
So I'm thinking that it would be the outreach efforts rather than the tally.
I'm going to suggest that we do this, and I'm going to need everybody to follow along, and if you get stuck, look my way and I'll help you out with this one, okay? We do have an open agenda item. All in favor of agendizing the item that I had proposed, say aye. All opposition to that agenda item, say nay. Nay. Good. Any abstentions?
I'm confused.
What we did was, so you want to take that as an abstention?
Yes.
Okay, good. So the nays canceled that. What we just did, Paul, was we had an open agenda item, and instead of going through a process and withdrawing and everything, we can just push through a process of not voting for an agenda item, which then cancels it out. Just makes it a little bit easier to get to the goal line for that. All right, moving forward. So we're not doing anything on homeless engagement at this time. Does anybody else want to take the other ones that we've got on the dashboard, or should I just keep going through?
Well, I would like to agendize the Brown Act training.
Perfect.
It's going to be a majority Brown Act, but it would also address Public Records Act and Political Reform Act. And it should be about a 30-minute training.
I thought that'd be a whole meeting.
Perfect. So I will second that.
Thank you.
And I just taught them how to oppose an agenda item, so I really hope that they don't take that power in right now. So all in favor of agendizing the training on the Brown Act and related information?
Aye.
For March. So I've got ayes. Any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, we've got that one. Good.
Thank you.
All right. I would like to go ahead and motion that we have an agenda item for equity and hiring and advancement. This would be an update from the Burbank Police Department on hiring and advancement practices within the department. For March.
Is asking the acting or the captain.
Can't talk about it yet until we get a second.
I'll second it.
Now we can open up for discussion.
I would only do that if the captain said that it was within their bandwidth with the other requests we gave them for that month.
So if we're going to do, I would suggest that if we're going to do the equity and hiring, that we do not do the film permit process, since the city attorney's office is going to do a half-hour presentation plus questions. You're
Okay.
probably looking at close to an hour there.
And then, you're going to get into the 3-hour mark if we have all 3 agenda items, probably, just
Yeah.
on this part. So
Okay.
I would suggest that I would like to do the film permit process first, next month, if that's okay. And then we could do the equity and hiring the following month, or vice versa.
Okay.
However, whatever the board pleases.
So I will go ahead, can I revise the motion that we move that to April?
Sure.
Okay, so for April, equity and hiring and advancement? Still have the
Yes,
second still?
second.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposition? Okay, so that will be in April. And then the last item here is, that's on the dashboard, is a review of annual crime statistics. So I will go ahead and motion that we, and actually, this is an interesting one. I will motion that we agendize a review of annual crime statistics with the Burbank Police Department. Do I have a second?
For March?
For March.
That's
a big one as
Yeah,
well.
I'm asking the chief.
That's
Yep.
going to take a lot of time as well.
Perfect. Okay, so on this one, nobody seconded it, right? Good, don't second it. Don't
I
second it.
make a motion that,
No, it dies.
No,
Okay,
it dies.
dies.
Okay,
Yeah,
dies,
second
good,
it.
there. Okay, now, Paul, go ahead.
I make a motion that we review of annual crime statistics for April.
Layla will second that. Any,
That's fine. Recognize that April then is going to be pretty full.
Yeah.
At that point.
What is on
And-
April? I'm sorry,
and your-
there's nothing listed on April. What's it?
And your dashboard is the Ripple Report and Communications Center Week. That's on your
Oh.
dashboard.
oh, we don't have those here. Oh, okay.
Oh, they're not, yeah, I'm sorry,
Shoot.
I wasn't looking at that.
Yeah, I was just going with what we had on here right now.
Do we have to agendize everything tonight? I mean, can we?
No, we don't have to agendize
March
everything
and April are
tonight.
booked, I think we're good.
And I'm also aware with what Sherry just mentioned, we don't have the dashboard in front of us at this moment, so there are other items that may be listed on the dashboard, so I'm making a note I'm making a note to come back to that one later on. So what we have is we have a motion for the review of annual crime statistics. Do I have a second?
When?
Hold on.
Okay.
I have a motion for review of annual crime statistics.
Second.
No, you motioned it. You can't second your motion.
I'll second
No,
it.
you were motioning.
No. Let me back up. You don't want to second it.
Keystone
Okay.
Cops.
Well, it's already been seconded.
It's been
All right, then we'll
seconded.
go
We
that
can
route.
set it we can put it on the dashboard for future agenda item, since it's been motioned already and seconded. And
Okay.
then we can figure that out as we go through the months.
Okay. For
Yes.
future agenda item. Okay, we'll go for future. I got a motion, I got a second for future agenda item for review of annual crime statistics. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, it's on the dashboard. It's not set on a date right now. All right, we've gotten through that. Romick, we are back to you.
Okay, so, do I make the motion again?
Yes.
Okay, so is this, and this could be for, did you say March? Or no? For the film?
March is full if you're going to stick with
Yeah.
what you've already decided.
Was the film permitting in March?
We have
Yes.
film permit process and we
Okay,
have the
it's
Brown
already
Act.
on there.
Hold on one second.
As we just said, March.
It was, the chair said equity and hiring in April and film permit process in March.
Yes.
Right? That's,
One more time, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna make the motion again. I guess.
Yes, go ahead and make the motion.
Okay, so I make a motion for a full report on the film permitting process. For March.
I will second that. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay. Oh, one abstention. One abstention, but it passes. Yep. And then Leila has one more motion. And Leila, go ahead and include the time that you're anticipating for this item as well.
Yes. I motion to include the discussion and possible recommendations, et cetera, about the pedestrian and bicyclist traffic safety report.
It'll actually be report, discussion, and recommendations
discussion, and
on
recommendations.
the ad hoc committee's pedestrian and bicycle safety
That one.
in
That.
Burbank report,
Yes.
which will also close out the ad hoc committee.
Yes. So that
For
for
what month?
I was
For
gonna
March.
say no, I was gonna say April.
April, for
Yeah.
April. Okay, we have a
And
motion.
and
I'll
as far as
second.
time, I don't plan to speak for more. Definitely not any more than 10 minutes. I will not be. This is not a
So we have a
long.
motion, we have a second.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Any abstentions? All right, we've got that on the record. Sherry? The domestic violence follow-up, thank you. Last item, I'm going to make a recommendation based on the work that the commission is going to be doing that we determined earlier this evening. I'm going to make a motion that we have a reporting out and further action. You actually used the language earlier. It was a recommendations, if applicable, on the domestic violence resources that the commission members had reached out on. Okay, great. Great. So I got a motion on that. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Say aye. Any opposition? Any abstentions? All right, so we've got that one. This is for March. That's good, which is going to close that out. Perfect. Any other agenda items that folks want to agendize at this time? All right, with that, I'm moving on to item I. Our next meeting date is going to be Wednesday, March 19th, 2025, right here in City Council Chamber. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting.